Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Hashmi. I am the head of experience design at Ideate Innovation. And today we're joined by two of my coworkers, Nayab Naveed and Ariba Rafi. Both these people are service designers and researchers and are exceptional at what they do. And everything that I'm about to show you, like over this presentation, both of them had a very, very huge part in putting this together and also like making it look like what it does. We're going to start off with a brief introduction of who we are as an organization. So as I said earlier, we are part of Ideate Innovation. We are a human-centered design firm who are committed to building a more equitable world. A lot of people tell us, okay, hey, it's still a bit confusing, like what is it that we do really? So in order to simplify that, I think this slide would answer that. So first of all, we do experience and brand design. So if any of you have any needs for web or mobile or AI designed products, then we solve that, right? Second one is service and business innovation, which essentially means that oftentimes businesses are trying to figure out how to do something better, or they feel like something isn't really working properly, whatever it is that they're doing. So they contact us and we come in and we spend time with them and we try to figure out various ways out of those problems. And the last one is research and strategic insights, which means that a lot of times people want to introduce a new product or a service to the market, but they don't really have a good idea about who this product might be for, or if the product's already out there in the market, uh, it might be running into some troubles. So if they want to improve that somehow or figure out more things about it, then that is the service that we provide. We did also just relaunch our website, ideateinnovation.com. And if you want to learn more about these things in detail, please go ahead and check that out. There's also like a surprise waiting for you guys on that website, and then we'll talk about that towards the end. Ooh, this is something I really, really wanted to talk to you guys about. So these are our values, which are informed empathy, iterative learning, collaborative design, equity and inclusion, and commitment to excellence. I know there's a lot of text on the slide. If you want to read it, that's fine. But essentially, why am I talking about these values is what we're doing here in this session aligns with all of these values. We've been doing something for a while, and we feel like we're quite good at this, but that's not enough, right? We want that everybody that we work with, everybody that we interact with, they have the same sort of knowledge that we do. So we've put together this playbook that we've put together through our experience, through testing it out in different places, and we now feel like that, hey, if we open this up to public, it will be a public good. Any person who like uses this playbook, they'll have the same amount of knowledge that we do, that we've gained. So we're very, very excited to talk to you about our values and also talk to you about the playbook that I'm just about to show you in a minute. This is who we work with. So some of you might, I don't know if any of you already belong to these organizations. We've worked with them in the past, and we've also used storytelling in some of these projects. And these projects are the opportunities that we found. We learned from them, figured out how to incorporate storytelling in our ways of working, and now we're here talking about it. Cool stuff? Okay, now we're going to get to the main part, the storytelling playbook. This is why you guys are here. Thank you again so much for attending. So we put this together, quite excited about this. So we're just going to jump right in. Cool. Okay, so we have this playbook, right? And this will serve as a guide for design practitioners, but it's not really just limited to design practitioners. Whatever profession you're in, hey, you can benefit from this, right? Because oftentimes, if you are in the design profession, you know that we rarely work in silos. We're always working with people practicing other things. So that is just how it is, right? So we made this for everybody. So in whatever profession you are, I'm very, very sure that you'll get something out of this. So that's a general sort of thing, right? So now, why should we use stories? Really, why do we believe in this enough that, hey, we put together a whole playbook and now we're sharing with you? So thing number one, like why use stories is that you get to enhance empathy. Now, I'm pretty sure people who are in the design profession, you're familiar with this word. A lot of the times, like this often happens in job interviews, so you ask that, hey, like what are three traits for like a design professional? And the first one, like the first answer that people usually like give you is like empathy. Now, what does that mean really, right? So this is a question that I particularly in our firm has been concerned with quite a while. Um, but essentially, like, and how does that relate to storytelling? Is that we ourselves are very used to thinking about our lives in a story format. Like you ask somebody, or like somebody asks you how your day was, you usually start to like tell a story, right? Oh, I woke up and then I did this. This is what I felt throughout. I got hungry and then this is what happened. So we're very used to doing that for ourselves. But when we're practicing our craft, literally what's demanded of us is that we sort of are able to put ourselves into another person's story, right? So a very, very good way of doing that is through storytelling. You understand what is the story of another person and you become well versed in that. So that's big reason number one about, hey, why you should try to incorporate storytelling in the way you work. Reason number two is that storytelling is very helpful in helping you understand collective experiences. Now, this is again something, stories don't really happen in vacuum. Like I am always part of some environment, right? Regardless of where I am. And whenever you're telling a story, you sort of, in a way, become forced to include that environment. Like the environment becomes a character of its own. Is that, oh, I am feeling a certain way because of something happening in my environment. Or if I'm in a social setting, there are other people there. If I'm feeling a certain type of way, or if I'm doing something, those other people are important. Whatever it is that other people are doing is also important to how I'm feeling or what I am doing. So this understanding of the collective experience becomes very, very easy when you use storytelling, because all of a sudden, like you aren't the only person in that circumstance, and like your story is tied to all of these um, other stories. We have an example included here. This is a project that both of my coworkers that I mentioned earlier, Nayab and Ariba, they worked on this project, right? And when they were speaking to menstruating women to understand their needs, they also spoke to people in their lives who strongly influenced them, mothers, in-laws, husbands, who together then informed the narrative of their experience. They played supporting characters who influenced the stories of menstruating women, what they wear, and how they behave. Reason number three about why you should care about this is that through stories or through storytelling, we're able to communicate complex problems in a more digestible and memorable fashion. Anybody who's worked in design or anybody who's worked in any particular profession, you know that most likely whatever it is that you're doing is quite complex. You may be thinking that you've spent like a very good amount of time in whatever it is that you're doing, and you understand all of the complexities. But whenever it comes time to talking about your work or explaining the same things to somebody else, you might have encountered situations where you just feel like it's just too confusing or complex to communicate. Even if like, you might be trying your best to communicate something, the other person might just be lost because they don't have the same context as you do. What storytelling allows you to do is to is to respect all of those complexities, but then communicate information in a way that is small in a way, and like that other people can remember easily, right? So it's very different from oversimplifying it, because we don't want to lose all the nuance. We want to keep the nuance, but we want to communicate things in a way that people remember. And people oftentimes remember stories, right? You might often have seen this in your setting, is that whenever you're trying to recall something, you may be thinking, Yes, हाँ मुझे कभी किसी ने कोई कहानी सुनाई थी, and I like remember that a little bit. And then lastly, this is a very, very important thing, right? Is that through storytelling, we take the burden of imagination off the audience. Mostly what happens is that whenever you're trying to communicate something complex, you may be speaking, and then whoever the listener is, they may be tasked with imagining a lot of it, a lot of what you're talking about. It might even be happening right now, right? So as design professionals, we always have to be thinking in whatever context we're in, who is our user? So when it comes to presenting, when it comes to talking about complex topics, you have to remember is that you got to do most of the work in that situation. So through storytelling, when you're telling a story, when you're like describing a narrative, it becomes a lot easier for the audience to follow along and to keep up with what you're saying. This also gives you a lot of control because you control where the story goes, and hence you have control over the audience's attention. Cool. So this we wanted to start off with this, right? So we wanted to start off with that. Hey, you guys gonna give us about like 40 minutes of your time. So why is that important? So this is the start of the playbook. Now we're gonna give you the first tool, which is how to write stories. And I'm gonna invite my coworker Nayab to walk us through that. Nayab, you should already have screen control. So yeah, this is okay. I've covered it. Yeah.
Sorry, I was having some technical issues.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. Um, why isn't this working? Can we go to the previous?
Yes. Do you not have the remote control? It says you do.
It keeps going forward. Yeah, okay. So now we come to how do you write a story? So we've really simplified it and we use this quote um as a way to imagine the way we write our stories. So all great literature is one of two stories. The first is a person goes on a journey, and the second is a stranger comes to town. And we don't exactly know who wrote this quote, maybe Leo Tolstoy, but a great writer. Um, so we can think of examples. I can't control the the thing, so someone will have to change the screen. Yeah. Okay. So we can apply this quote to stories we've heard. So the first one is Soni Mahiwal. And you all know the Coke Studio song. Sony she swims from one side of the river to another in an earthenware pot to meet her lover Mahiwal. And this is clearly a very good example of a person goes on a journey. On the other hand, um, if we go to Goldilocks, the 19th century English fairy tale, um, Goldilocks is the person who enters the bear's home and lives in it, and that is an example of a stranger comes to town. And we can see that both of these stories, from vastly different contexts, can be broken down into these two essential narratives. Um, I really want to invite you all to think of examples um, in the chat box of a stranger comes to town or a person goes on a journey. But moving on, we want to think of what are some elements that all stories have. There's character, obviously, a person that takes part in the action of a story. And then this is really important is desire, one strong need or want that a character has. Uh, then there are obstacles in the way of that desire. These are hurdles in the way of the character's strong need or want, and that is what creates the conflict, which is the struggle between the character's desire and obstacles. And then at the end is the resolution. How did the character change or transform through the challenge? We, in our framework, are going to pick three of these elements um, and make a very simple equation type thing where we say that character plus desire plus obstacle is what makes a story. And I'll come to what it means in design terms. But what I essentially mean by this character plus desire plus obstacle is that you have a character, you give them a desire, and the way that the character responds to the obstacles in the way of his desire is what shows us what the character is made of. It shows us his characteristics, how he responds to adversities, he or she. And that is what makes a story. As designers, if we reframe this into design terms, it would be character would be user, desire would be need, and obstacle would be barrier. And as designers, opportunity for interventions come when our users or the main characters face a hurdle or a barrier. So in this way, if the way we respond to the barrier as designers is what is shapes the story we tell about the product or service. So we've given you an example of a story which has these three components of the framework. So here's Sumera. She is a female micro entrepreneur. She has a daughter-in-law, Aisha, who has a very complicated pregnancy. And they live in Kambar Shadat Court, and the doctor has advised that, Aisha really needs to eat a lot of fruits because she needs to really improve her nutrition. And fruits are really expensive, and Sumera is the only one who earns in the house. So the small shop that she's opened is not very popular ever since the floods that happened. And in order to sort of buy fruits for Aisha, she needs to expand her business. But for that, to expand her business, usko stock city se lana hai, Kamar city se. And the village people do not approve of women going to the city alone. So women have to be accompanied by a man. If we break this down, if we break this story down into the three things that we've listed out, the character would be Sumera. The desire would be earn enough to take care of her pregnant daughter-in-law, and the obstacle is low mobility. So we must pay attention to the obstacle of low mobility in Sumera's case. And as storytellers, that's the starting point where our story can further develop. The way that Sumera responds to low mobility ka barrier of not being able to travel to the city alone will show the reader her characteristics as well as produce a story. But as designers, um, that's an opportunity for intervention. So, an example of an intervention could be that a service that gives female micro entrepreneurs like Sumera the option to buy stock on credit, which gets delivered to a nearby location so that financially struggling female micro entrepreneurs don't have to travel to the city to get their stock. And that's just an example of an intervention. So we've created this sort of worksheet for you to use where we first highlight the character or user. And this is where you just list down what the characteristics of the character are and give them a strong desire or need. Um, and then that leads to obstacle one in their path of that desire or need, and then present them with further obstacles. Like one obstacle is not enough to generate a good compelling story. You present them with more obstacles so that the stakes are higher. and what happens in, if it's a successful journey or a failed journey, that's where you put in what happens then, and that is what leads to the character changing, or how they change, or if they don't change in the resolution part. So just a simple worksheet to fill out in order to create your own stories. So this is a mid playbook bonus, and that's storyboarding. And it's always helpful to to pair your stories with a visual aid, and a storyboard is a great way to do that. I'm sure all of you might know what a storyboard already is, but just for people who don't know, it's like it's something which it's a tool which communicates a story through images displayed in a sequence of panels that chronologically maps the story's main events. And we've broken it down into three things. There are three essential things that you need for your storyboard. The first is scenario. Um, you tell, you sort of lay out कि जो persona या जो user है उसका क्या scenario है, and a brief summary of the situations, clear enough so that people reading that storyboard can understand what it is. So we've given example कि female micro entrepreneur Samara needs to expand her business. The second thing is imagery. So every stage of the situation is visually depicted in a sequential manner. It depends on your intent and on your audience. What fidelity or what level of detail do you use in your storyboard? It could be rudimentary sketches or it could be detailed representations. It can also include dialogue bubbles. It could also include interfaces, user surroundings, things like that. And description is the third part of the storyboard. You pair each visual element with a short description. And since it's a visual aid more, the descriptions don't have to be that long or detailed. The visuals should take precedent in the storyboard. So we've filled it out for you. That's Kamal quote, and Sumera's need is कि उसकी daughter-in-law has to eat fruits. Fruits are expensive. Sumera की जो jewelry shop है उसकी sales नहीं हो रही. That is an obstacle. And the stage where Sumera needs to earn more money for her pregnant daughter-in-law is an ideation stage, and the resolution, or kind of like what drives the story forward, is how she uh, expands her stock. So this is a worksheet you can use for your own stories. So that was how we write stories. Now we're going to move on to how do you apply this playbook, and I would invite Ariba to expand on that.
Thanks, Nab. Let me see if I have control. Yes, I do. Okay. So, thank you for walking us through how to write stories. Now, you all have some ideas on how, now that you have some ideas on how to write, in this third section, we will talk about some strategies on how to tell these stories and apply it. How do you apply this playbook when actually presenting your work or talking about your work? So the first idea is to make one compelling point. Now, that's not to say that your other points shouldn't be compelling, but that you should have one singular thesis of your presentation. If you're telling a story about your users, your process, the design, what is that one thing that you want your audience, whether they are your clients, your managers, their C-level execs, or they're your users to whom you're presenting or proposing a design solution, what do you want these stakeholders to take away from your presentation? So identifying that singular point and making sure that all elements in your presentation, in your narrative, they all align to support the central idea. And that's in order to make clear what is the purpose of sharing the story and narrative with them. Then moving on, second point is to tell stories that evoke emotion. Okay, so why do we care about solving one part of a bigger problem where we're usually what we're working with is are multiple aspects of the user's experience. So why do we pick certain opportunity areas over others, and why do we feel strongly about solving certain problems over others? It's because we hear from our users, we hear about their emotions, and we hear them talk about the product and service, and we hear about how it makes them feel. And those emotions are the things that drive us to want to come up with solutions. And it's the same thing we as designers also want our stakeholders to care about. So making sure that we are communicating that emotion across, making sure that we do our part in becoming the bridge between the users and the stakeholders, we can convince decision makers of the role that our intervention will play if we can make them feel for the user. So it's making sure that whatever stories we tell, they are very they don't have to be very emotional in themselves, but have enough emotion to evoke a similar emotion to the person who's listening and to the audience. Sorry. Number three, to confirm or disprove existing knowledge. So it's likely that at this point you've crafted a narrative, a story to tell certain decision makers what you have learned about the users. Now, more likely than not, these people have worked with the product or the service longer than you have, and they might have pre-existing notions and ideas about the user already. So your work should either confirm their knowledge, that yes, we have learned the same things about your user, or it should disprove their ideas. So this means that you can have, and you should have, an open dialogue with your audience in your story, in your presentation, and really get down to what they think they know about the users and what you have learned about them. Although it's very tempting to immediately tell managers or clients what we've learned, we also have to tell stories in an impactful way. And one way that we've practiced is we sometimes ask our clients what they think the user said, and we put up an incomplete quote of the user, ask them to fill in a blank. And more often than not, the audience is surprised by what they learn. They may say one thing, they may say that the user cares more about documentation, but we find out is that they care more about their expectations not being met. So it's always interesting for your audience as well, and valuable for them to draw that comparison for them. Okay, this is what you think you know, or what existing knowledge you have, and what new things we have discovered, or even if it's not new, but what we have learned that confirms that knowledge. So it encourages them to evaluate their own assumptions, biases, ideas, knowledge, and drives them to consider how to move forward with this new information that they have gained. Next. So let's talk about sharing the spotlight with your users. So, of course, telling a story about your user is good, and having them tell their own story is even better. So after writing a story about a user, it's important to also include their anecdotes within that story. And at this point, snippets from your research that you've gathered can be really powerful. For one, it can add a life to your story. So it's an active voice of the user and the way that they've spoken about their experience. That's very important. And there's always a difference. I mean, I'm sure you guys must have noticed when you hear someone telling their own story versus when you hear it from a third person, it's very different. The way that they craft it, the way that the words that they use to talk about their experience are always going to be more impactful and powerful. So one is that, and then secondly, it also adds authenticity to your larger narrative. So anecdotes should support your story, and these can be in the form of videos or audios if you have consent to share, or quotes amidst your presentation or a report, whatever it is. Lastly, oops, sorry. Lastly, let's talk about the aha moment. So this is a crucial moment of your story. This is where the audience engages with your findings and learns something that's really important to the user's needs that they may previously not know. So this aha moment is something that can be leveraged to its full potential to draw stakeholder buy-in. For this is what will compel them to action, and using insights, using this one particular point can and should be connected with, of course, some call to action or some encourage stakeholders to move forward with your design, with your intervention, and accept the potential of it. So all of these make up some points on some strategies on how we can tell stories within our field of work. Then next we have a worksheet here, and similar to, oops, sorry, little bit of a sneak peek there, but we have one more worksheet here, and this leads you to start thinking about, even before you start writing your stories, leads you to start thinking about who this story is for. So the audience, the stakeholders, whether they be clients or managers or your users, what is the reason you want to tell them this story? What do you want to achieve through it? What are their needs? What do they want to hear? How do they feel? What have they experienced before your story? And then moves on for you to, then guides you to move on and start writing and setting the scene, making your point, concluding, and what to do after you're done with the story. This will also be made available to you. I think Ashma will talk about that further. Over to you, Ashmi.
Thanks. I'm gonna try to get the remote control back. It's so tricky. Okay, here we go. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna turn my video
Ashmi, we
back
can't see you. Yeah,
on.
you're back.
Hi. Okay. Cool. I'm back. Cool. So there we go, guys. We wanted to like keep it short. We wanted to keep it brief. Through this playbook, now you should know how to do three things: know how to write a story, know how to visualize it, and then also know how to present it. Now we're very, very excited to be able to like share this worksheet with you. What we ask of you is to go ahead, like download that, and then tell us how you want to like use this playbook. And if you already like, I see the chat is happening. If you already have like a bunch of ideas about how you want to go ahead and like want to use this playbook, then we want ask one thing of you is that if you guys have your phones with you, or if you're on any type of device, if you could just go to this website and type in this code, we would be super grateful to you guys. And just like let us know in the chat when you guys are there, because we wanna ask something of you. Cool, are you guys doing it? Okay, awesome. People are there. Reba, how would you want me to do this? Should I just turn my sharing off?
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Okay, cool. Just like before we get to this, before we get to that, I know since we're like already sharing this is the team that worked on this. So three of us are here, three of us are in the background. They were also very, very instrumental in putting this together. Extra shout out to Umair Basi to like make this playbook look very, very nice. We're very glad on how this turned out. Yes, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, cool.
Oh, I don't have
Sharing privileges?
sharing
Let
privileges.
me. Well, you're host, no? Okay, wait. Let me make you co-host. Make co-host. Check now.
Yes.
Do you have it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna type the chat back in, sorry, the code in the chat.
Ooh. You guys access the question on Menti. Yeah. How can you apply this playbook to your work? Here we have some coming in. Presentations to internal stakeholders, contextualize problems at hand in a better way. Interesting. Currently working on a project around PCOS awareness, and we're actually working on the lo-fi stage. So using this iterative process to craft sensitive scenarios will be a great addition. That's awesome. To present insights to decision makers through stories, to convince them that we're not saying this ourselves, the users are telling us this. Yes, so important. Within the team storyboard and write the story building on user personas, user stories. Interesting. I'm not a designer per se, but I think this framework might prove to be important for the discovery phase with my clients. That's really interesting. I love that this can be applied to so many people in different roles and their work, not just design. Currently working on disability inclusion project and need to convey through stories why they should hire more inclusively. That is really, really important, really cool. Will have me in presenting my game design ideas, capture user needs in ways that are truer and closer to those needs. The storytelling aspect really gave me tips to improve my UX case study. Very, very interesting. We'll be using this for an upcoming project on vocational training. I think it will be very helpful to understand unique needs of different types of users. Nice. Everybody has like really, really insightful thoughts on how they can apply this. That's fun. Awesome. Cool. Hashmi, do you wanna close it or have a round of Q&A?
Sure, yeah, we can do that. Thank you guys so much for interacting with our Mentimeter. Really appreciated that as well. I'm gonna see if is it okay if I start sharing my screen again? Okay. Back to our presentation. Oh, yeah, we were talking about our team. So we thanked those. Oh, and here we go. So I remember earlier I said, hey, we have a surprise for you. So the surprise is that everything we presented is available in a downloadable format with separate worksheets in black and white, so you can print it out, or just use it online, however you feel like it. And in order to access it, you can go to ideateinnovation.com/resources. It's a page there. It has this playbook you'll see right in front of you. It also has all of the previous things that we've done, either online or in person. So all of the Design in the World series, I know some of you have attended those. So we put up recordings from there. Our past webinars, you can also just like go watch those videos on this page. Cool. I'm gonna go look at the question and answers. Let's see. Okay, so we have a question that says, how can non-profit organizations tell a story through design. Okay, that's a very good one. I personally think that I feel like nonprofits are a very, very cool opportunity. If you are working in one, like you have a very cool opportunity to use this because a lot of the times, like nonprofits are targeting some sort of a group, and there are a lot of like large numbers involved. It's like, X amount of people are impacted by this disaster or something else. Those large numbers, sometimes people have very, very difficulty in imagining what that looks like, right? Like, what does 500,000 people look like? It's very, very difficult to like imagine that scaled. But if you are able to sort of just talk about the story of one of those individuals who are impacted, that's a very, very good starting point to then making that your point on at scale. Is that, hey, I've just told you the story of one person who was impacted adversely by anything that happened. Now imagine that, like, 500,000 times more. So I think that's a way you should probably start thinking about it, is that tell a story of one person and then lead them to the numbers slide, saying that, hey, that this is how, like, this is what the scale of the issue is. Okay, we have another question by Tanir. How is the resolution intervention worked upon for contextualized barriers that may not have pre-existing research work done owing to the diversity of circumstances in Pakistan, particularly? Okay, I think I'm gonna have to spend a minute just to understand that question. Um, Ariba and Nayab, can you guys see that question also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do anyone you want to
Mm.
take this?
Tanya, can you give a little bit more detail into what this might be in reference to? What do you mean by contextualized barriers, like particular to those in our society?
Or if you could give an example, like that would be great as well.
Let me see if I can just like like give you talk access. Can you, Tanya, can you look at into your bottom bar? Are you able to unmute and just like explain this to us?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I think I used थोड़ी सी मुश्किल अल्फाज for that question. Essentially what I meant was कि ऐसे मसाइल होते हैं जो particularly अगर पाकिस्तान के context में लोगों को पेश आते हैं and we oftentimes don't have research for that. Given the fact that especially with design and technology, a lot of the work is done outside. So right now if something that I can think about is कि like अगर एक किसान है और उनको अपनी they need to create like a system for how they can hire labor but they don't have access to that technology. आपने उनके लिए technology बनानी है तो they don't even have the knowledge for how it would work. So just when the barrier has multiple barriers to it and it's not something that's particular outside of Pakistan, but that's pre-existing research, then how do you contextualize the solution as well?
I see. I think so. Your question is like, I think it's in a larger context as well. In terms of like what we just presented, I think that's also a very good opportunity for to use storytelling as a technique, because what happens is that if there's somebody from the outside, they have a very different context on how things might happen. So that actually provides a very, very cool opportunity to use this framework because there's a conflict right there. Because the person who's probably bringing in the technology has a different context. but whatever is happening with us here in our local context is something else entirely, right? So you could actually just write a story where that is the conflict, where somebody is bringing in the technology, but it's being received or used in an entirely different manner altogether. So try storyboarding that out, so one stakeholder, whoever is bringing in the technology, that's one character. And the person who's going to use that's another character. So how are those like two worlds sort of colliding? What happens when context A meets context B? And then take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
So in the question and answers panel, I just see these two. I wonder if anybody has asked anything in the chat.
Yes, Khala has asked, how have your stakeholders responded to these presentations? Do you have metrics to see how convinced they are?
Metrics, in terms of metrics, I mean, I can say anytime we've used this, we've had a lot more people engaged throughout the time that we're allotted. Whether those be like 20-minute sessions or like hour-long sessions, what usually ends up happening is that our projects span a few months, and we're doing research that also span like a few months. Now, trying to condense all of that information in a 40-minute presentation is a huge challenge, right? And we do oftentimes have like a lot of data, a lot of information that we want to convey to people. And we see, oftentimes we've seen clients like check out like visibly, right? Like somebody's on their phone, somebody is saying that, oh, I have to run to my next meeting. But anytime we've used this storytelling format and we just calm down, we sit down, we walk them through a particular person that they can sort of like relate to, they walk away being like, okay, yes, now I see.
Yeah, and also we use this storytelling technique in one of our projects in SWAT. And we were basically using stories as a research tool. And we were narrating the stories that we wrote to these women who we wanted to create like a sexual reproductive health service and a gender-based violence service. So we found that actually, like through the stories, a lot of women would share examples of their own lives. It would help them come up with stories of their own. It would help them share things that they wouldn't normally share with you unless you ask them through a story. So a lot of them would respond emotively. They would be happy, they would be laughing, they would be crying, um, in a like a positive way, and yeah, they were just really engaged throughout. It's compare that to a simple interview. I feel like it our stories generated a lot more responses, I feel, which would take the pressure off the user to share their story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Are there other comments or questions that you guys have? Okay, let's see. We got a question. Okay, Sanya is asking, do you not think that storytelling techniques vary from project to project? For instance, some projects may not have a story at all. First of all, I think we do think that storytelling techniques vary from project to project. I think that's why we sort of like created this playbook, is that, this is just a framework of thinking about whatever it is that you are doing. And that is the ask of us, right? Whatever sort of thing that you're practicing, you have to engage with this framework and try to think that, okay, what is a story that I can like take out from whatever it is that I'm doing? And for instance, some projects may not have a story at all. I don't know, honestly. Do you want to explain this further? Like, do you want to talk about this more? Like, are you thinking of a specific example where there may not be any story? And again, I'm gonna see how to give you, okay, Sanya, so I'm gonna, okay. You guys, you have mic access now, so if you want to explain that, we definitely appreciate it.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
Fine,
Welcome,
Sam.
Sam.
ओके, मेरा पॉइंट ये है कि कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स ऐसे भी होते हैं जिनमें इस तरह की स्टोरी टेलिंग की हमें शायद ज़रूरत नहीं होती, या वो प्रोजेक्ट ऐसे नहीं होते जिसमें हम इस तरह से स्टोरी बता सकें। सो फिर ऐसे प्रोजेक्ट्स के लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं?
Like maslan,
जैसे कि अभी चैट में कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स को मैंने देखा, एक दो प्रोजेक्ट मेरी नज़र से गुजरे हैं, जिन्होंने स्टोरी टेलिंग के बारे में बताया है। मतलब वो प्रोजेक्ट्स ऐसे हैं जिनके ऊपर स्टोरी क्रिएट की जा सकती है टू प्रेजेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स, लेकिन कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स ऐसे होते हैं जिनमें इस तरह की स्टोरीज नहीं होती, तो उनको किस तरह से हम एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं?
I think I'm really just really trying to
Mhm.
like try to find out an example of a project that doesn't have a story. Did anybody else like see an example?
Or can think of an example.
हाँ, बताइए.
Mm, I'm thinking like, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Ariba.
I'm thinking there definitely, because what does a project mean? Matlab, project can be anything. Sometimes it's just reworking the back end of some product or something. So maybe at that point, it's उसमें इतनी ना user experience की बात हो रही है, ना उसमें इतना relevance है user experience का. So I can see how some projects might not need such might not need the storytelling aspect where you're talking about the user as such, or sharing their story, or how the work will impact their or change their story. But there can always be a storytelling aspect of the way that you present your work, even if it is a project where there is no user at the center of it. Telling a story about your process can also draw stakeholder buy-in and get them to care about what you have proposed and what your design is. Yeah, as Fazan said, how the project was done, what are the barriers that need to be tackled to get that project done, the process of it, and then leading up to what you are proposing should be done now and what they should invest in now. That whole thing, your journey is also a story. And the journey of others who you're working with as part of a team and stuff.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for clarifying, and then thank you for the answers. Last question. Ibrahim's asking, has there ever been a time when a client or stakeholder didn't appreciate the storytelling format? Yes, it's also a very hard sell कि अगर आप final presentation schedule कर रहे हैं और आपने ये sort of expectation set किया है कि हाँ मैं आपको कहानी सुनाऊंगा for a घंटा. Like nobody would want to like give you that time, right? So you have to be really, really smart about it. How we've done it is that we just insert stories. So we will have a final presentation deck that includes all of our research findings, and we'll start off by very much like in a very standard format. Is that hey, we went to these places, we interviewed X amount of people, and then very like sneakily, we'll show a quote. Is that hey, one of the people said this, and then we go into our story. Then we tell like, okay, who was this person? What happened? Why did they say it? Uske baad kya hua? And then we go back into like a regular slides. So that's you have to really be, like a bit clever with that. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for attending. Again, thank you for engaging with us in the chat. Thank you for asking your questions. Thank you for engaging with our Mentimeter, and thank you for downloading the playbook. So yeah, we ask that please download this. Go ahead, use it. Whenever you end up using it, please let us know. We'd really like it when you do that. Right? So talk to us on Instagram, talk to us on LinkedIn. We'd really appreciate it. Cool. Also, again, really appreciate you taking time out in Ramzan. Thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it. Hafiz, have a
Thank you,
good night.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.